the brand new VW Golf R, now with a drift mode. My question is though, at over £50,000, is it any better than its competitors? Like one of these, a BMW M340i. Or has the VW tax gone a little bit too far? Well, today we are going to find out. We're going to test this thing's 0 to 60, 30 to 70, how much MPG it will really do, see what it's like on the motorway, and of course, how fun it is to drive. So let's get into it. My name's Tom, and you are watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. First things first, we've got to talk about the engine because this is the fourth evolution of the EA 888 2-litre inline 4-cylinder turbo, and it is a masterpiece. Not only are power figures up from the previous car, this has 333 horsepower and 420 newton meters of torque. That power goes through a 7-speed gearbox that goes through a very clever all-wheel drive system, which not only makes this thing supposedly very fun to drive, but also very quick off the line. First though, we're going to test the 30 to 70 because in my mind that's a bit more realistic in terms of real world acceleration. Let's see what she can do. So then, how did we do on the 30 to 70 sprint? Well, we managed a very fast time of just 3.95 seconds. So not only is that quicker than the previous VW Golf R, it is nearly as fast as some proper performance cars. We are only 0.4 seconds off of an Audi RS3 and, unfortunately, 0.1 of a second off of the much cheaper and older BMW M140i. But that is still a very fast time for a 2-litre engine. So immediately driving around town, suspension feels a little bit sportier, a little bit stiffer than the previous car. The steering is so fast now. The only thing that I'm feeling already though is that it still doesn't really feel like it's got very positive turn-in. But compared to the Mark 7, it just feels tighter, sharper, and like 15% quicker, if you know what I mean. All the control surfaces just feel a bit more expensive, a bit more dialed in. I'm liking the steering though actually, and the actual steering wheel is quite nice. The only thing I'm not so keen on are these haptic buttons. I think they look quite cool, but piano black plastic, they get finger marks on them very quickly, and when you press them they just don't feel that nice. I much prefer the old style buttons, which thankfully you still get in cars like the VW Golf GTI Club Sport. But very comfortable, dual clutch gearbox, shuffles through gears nicely, and this engine is just a masterpiece. They've taken the previous generation EA 888 engine and just made it better. The torque is nice and low down still, and I'll show you later, you can still rev this thing out a lot. This thing is properly fast, but it's just such a good all-rounder. It really is. Then in terms of parking this thing, I mean, it's a Golf, right? So it should be easy. Well, it might be a Golf, but this thing is actually pretty big. If you look at it next to other cars like my BMW M140i, it looks massive, and that is because the boot is just huge in this thing. This is basically the same size as an Audi A6, so you do need your 360 and reverse camera with lines telling you where you're going to go. Now then, there's not a lot of steering angle on this thing. It's kind of similar to something like a Ford Focus RS in the way that it kind of prioritizes a lot of camber on the wheels and feeling, I say feeling like that because there isn't that much, in the steering over being super practical and tight turning. But with the 360 camera you can see easily in the bay, and you can always get to the first notch on the door. There's a lot of bonging in this car as well. New cars these days, they just bong so much. Right, out of junctions, this is where Golf Rs are obviously going to be very good, right? All-wheel drive traction, and 420 newton meters of torque. Let's give it half throttle, see what we can do. Yeah. It's just off immediately. There is zero drama. And the thing is, even though this is still a Haldex-based system, it kind of feels like it's always engaged. It never really feels like the car's front-wheel drive, even in low traction situations, which is really nice. So it does just feel like a proper car. Now, of course, this one does have the optional diff at the back, so obviously that's probably helping, especially when it comes to cornering. It just feels like it's pushing you around the corner a bit more rather than pulling you, which is what you want. It just feels nicer to drive than a purely front-wheel drive car. And it feels so capable as well. Right, in terms of economy, this is where things get interesting, because newer cars have to quote a revised WLTP cycle, which basically means they have to be honest. They're not allowed to lie or fudge the numbers. So this car is only claimed to do 34 mpg on the combined cycle. Remember, this is the full estate car, so it is a little bit heavier than the regular hatch. Still under 1,500 kilos though, which I don't know how they do that for such a large car. But yeah, 34 mpg, and we've got a 55 litre fuel tank. So, as you can imagine, you're not actually going to get that far on a single tank of petrol. If you use the whole tank and do 34 miles per gallon, you are going to get 411 miles. But remember, that's the entire fuel tank. Most of the time you're going to use 3/4 of a tank before you fill up. And in that case, you're going to get 308 miles, which is not much more. In fact, it's actually a little bit less than some EVs these days. Although, having said that, obviously you can just fill it full of liquid rather than sitting at a charger for an hour. But in terms of cost, it'll cost you about 80 quid to fill this up at £1.45 a litre, and if you use 3/4 of a tank, about 60 quid. So all in all, it's not a hugely expensive car to run, but that's if it does 34 miles per gallon, which I think, because it's a WLTP cycle figure, it might actually do. So let's reset our trip computer and use these horrible haptic buttons. It's very slow to do anything. I don't really like them. Obviously, it's a combined figure, so we're going to do a little handling test first. Get this thing in race mode, see what it sounds like, see what it handles like. And then we're going to get on the motorway, see how quiet this thing is using a proper decibel reader, and of course, testing that MPG figure. So, new Golf R, we have a drive mode selector on the steering wheel, and we have a race mode with a special setting, which is what we want. This gives us very sporty gear changes from this dual clutch gearbox, opens up the valve in the exhaust, and I'm going to go for some manual changes actually, because this has really rather nice paddles, better than an Audi I would say. Then coming out of corners, you feel that rear drive bias, and you feel that this is kind of a bit of a track weapon. Like, it really doesn't understeer under power anymore. In fact, it's prone to quite a lot of oversteer. And going around corners like that make you realise that this thing is going to be an absolute weapon around a track. And that's not only because it handles well, that's because the brakes are also massive on this version, and they just have a really nice bite point to them. Anyway, let's now do the other thing that a Golf R should be very good at, and that is economical driving. This might be a hot hatch, but it is also just a regular hatchback at the end of the day. So it's got to be fun, fast, track ready, but also very good at doing the mundane stuff. But yeah, in eco mode, worst case scenario, but it's still a Golf R, it should be quick. So if I just plant my foot down now, changes down quite a few gears, and yeah, this engine is just a masterpiece. It's so quick, this car. Then once on the motorway, visibility is good, you can see in your blind spot easily, and we have this glorious thing called travel assist, which is basically auto steer and auto cruise. Set it to 70 miles an hour and it will literally do everything for you. And the thing is, a lot of these systems will either keep you in the lane too much, or they won't really keep you in the middle lane at all. With VW system, what I like is it's kind of in between. It keeps you in lane, in the middle of the lane, but the steering's not so tight that it feels like it's taking too much control away from you. So you still feel like you're in control, and you can just kind of rest your hand on the steering wheel, get your armrest up and relax. Now, the one thing I will say is that this is quite loud on the motorway. You do get quite a bit of tyre noise, which is interesting. And now it could be because we're running on sporty tyres, but it is still quite noisy. Having said that, it's still a Volkswagen Golf, so it's not going to be quite as good as the equivalent Audi, or at least it shouldn't be in terms of MVH levels. Thankfully, wind noise is very low, so obviously if you're at higher speeds, road noise kind of cancels out. But this is where I love travel assist, right? So it can obviously see the car in front of me, and it's actually going to auto steer around this corner because it knows that this is a corner. In fact, it will come up on the dash telling you when you're approaching roundabouts or approaching corners, and it will just steer for you. And it's a bit disconcerting at first, but it does work about 80% of the time. So you can see on the dash now, it's coming up with a little corner sign, and then it's changing the speed limit as well, and it knows this is a corner. The only problem is it kind of slows down a lot, so I usually take over control of the car. But you can tell where they're going with it. It's getting there slowly but surely. And the thing is, if you just want to chill out on your commute to work, this car will do 90% of the work for you. So, you know, on the motorway, you don't really want to drive the car that much. You can just chill out. Then as soon as you get to a B road, you got your button on your steering wheel to whack it into race mode and have some proper fun with it. It's such a good best of both worlds car. The only problem is obviously the price. Over 50 grand for one of these. That's a lot of money. So, to be honest, I would probably be buying one on the used market that's a couple of years old, because a lot of these are going to get leased. So after 2 years, you'll see a couple on the market for sort of 35 to 38 grand, and I think they're absolutely worth the money when you go for them like that. Anyway, now it's time to put this thing through its paces in terms of economy and actual noise levels. So let's see if this thing can match its WLTP figure. We had a nice clear run on the motorway, and we did 34.3 mpg, exactly the quoted combined cycle figure. So it just goes to show that they are quoting accurate figures these days, which is lovely. The only thing is though, a car with a bigger, more powerful engine that is also an estate car beat that figure, and that was the BMW M340i. Faster, bigger engine, and unfortunately on the motorway, more efficient. So yeah, that's a bit of a win for the BMW fanboys, I think there. But is this going to be more fun to drive? I know it's a VW, but will that trick diff enable me to have some proper fun in this thing? Oh, before I forget as well, the decibel level was 74.9. So this is actually quite a noisy car to be in as well. For comparison, an Audi S3, which is comparable to this, did 73.5, so quite a bit quieter. Anyway, enough jargon. Let's get ourselves into race mode, shall we? And have some proper fun. Immediately, steering feels lovely in this thing. Front end turning is good. Right, let's test these brakes. Oh my lord, yeah, GoPro nearly went flying. Brakes work. Right, let's see what the sound is like from the inside. Could do with a res delete, I think. But the handling is what's surprising me the most. It just does not want to understeer. Obviously at road legal speeds, but that's all you can do. Look at that. Properly powering out of corners. It's really weird to me to like feel this in a Volkswagen. I'm like cautiously not putting my foot down because I'm afraid it's going to understeer, but it's just not. It is literally sending power to the back, and it's working, more importantly. A very odd sensation indeed. A couple of pops from the exhaust there. Yeah, it just literally will not understeer. Good lord, it's fast as well, isn't it? Doesn't even feel like you have to rev the thing out. One thing I love about this powertrain as well is that dual clutch gearbox. Now, I think the ZF 8-speed torque converter in BMWs is fundamentally better because of how much torque it can handle and all that when it's remapped. But I do prefer this one, especially when I'm driving quickly, because it's just so snappy. So snappy. See if we can get a pop from the exhaust. Couple of little burbles, nothing massive. This is brilliant. Res delete required, I think. Whoa. Do you know what this feels like? It feels kind of like an X-Drive system. Obviously, it works differently because it's still a front-wheel drive based system, but it does kind of feel like an M340i to drive. A little bit less oversteer, but it almost feels like it's got four-wheel steering, which is strange. But I just know if I took this to a track, I would mince a lot of cars there because it's just got so much traction. Like, you can literally just plant your foot coming out of corners and it will not understeer. It's such an odd sensation. To have that in a VW Golf is something truly special. Wow, yeah. Round the Nürburgring, I mean, you can feel that this is a Nürburgring setting. It just feels like you could do 155 miles an hour around every single corner there. Truly extraordinary bit of kit. And so much more fun to drive than the previous car. So much more fun. It's really weird. A couple of journalists have said the previous car was more fun, but I think they need to drive them back to back because this is hands down the winner when it comes to dynamic driving. You just get so much more push from the rear, which ultimately, for me at least, is just way more fun. And this engine is glorious. So good. Anyway, now it's time to test out the 0-60. Claimed time is 4.6 seconds, but VW usually tell porkies about their 0-60 time, so let's see if it can beat that figure. 0-60 then, we managed a very good time of 4.35 seconds. So it just goes to show that VW definitely underquote their 0-60 figures, as we beat it by 0.25 seconds. But unfortunately, we weren't quite as quick as the pretty much equally priced BMW M340i xDrive. So yeah, faster than its claimed time, and also just very fast. Our favourite road is closed today, so... You can see a little bit of sideways action there. Look at that! Still won't understeer. So yeah, this thing is a B-road weapon, fast and semi-economical. But, and there is a big but unfortunately, the BMW M340i exists, and fundamentally, for me at least, it's the better car. And when you consider this thing is basically the same price, the M340i has a higher quality interior, is more economical on the motorway, and a little bit faster. What are you gonna do? Having said that, I do think the Golf R has come a long, long way, and this is a masterpiece compared to the previous car. The only thing that I'm not too keen on is just this ginormous screen and the infotainment. It's a bit annoying. But the steering's better, having these nice big paddles is lovely, and the chassis is just gorgeous in this thing now. For an estate car, this thing handles so well. It feels so planted, so confidence-inspiring, and finally is not the king of understeer. This is a fun car to take out on a Sunday drive. Like, genuinely fun, and not just in a straight line. Anyway, I think we'll wrap up there today. My name has been Tom, and you have been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.